Good morning on April 13th, 2021. Today we'll talk about deductive reasoning, which we talked about on a couple of different occasions. One, it was a glossary term. The syllogism is a glossary term. So I don't think I'll add that to the vocabulary list because it's not a very common word. And on Thursday, well, and then you'll have a short assignment resultant of the deductive reasoning, whose main purpose is just to make you think about your own argument in logical terms. And then on Thursday, I'll talk more about citation. There won't be anything new. It'll be reminders and review, and probably pull up a blank document and just show you how I would go about setting it up. Doesn't mean you have to set it up that way. All I grade is the product. But if you need help getting, along the path. And then Monday, your works cited page would be due. And is it Monday? Yeah, Monday. And between Monday and I pushed off the due date to Wednesday, either during class or, through email or whatever, I'll let you know, or through a grade. I'll let you know how your works cited stands before it becomes final. And then next Thursday, we'll move on to the group presentation discussion. I plan to spend some time tomorrow setting up the groups and creating the guidelines. It'll be very basic. I'm not asking for a whole lot. I thought about scrapping it all together, but then I would feel bad that I was neglecting an aspect of the course that I'm supposed to hit upon, but it really doesn't quite apply the same way. And that's pretty much the end of the semester over the next, this week and the next 2 weeks. So we'll get right to it. Deductive reasoning. I'm not sure if this document that I'm about to show you defines it, but deductive reasoning is a type of logic that moves from general ideas to a more specific conclusion, as opposed to inductive reasoning, which moves from specific items to a general conclusion. The way that a good prosecution would present evidence to a jury one bit at a time, to the point where they can't but choose to make the conclusion. Well, I mean, a defense team could do the same thing, but so it's giving you pieces of evidence, sort of specifically, until you can't but make a conclusion that's general about guilt or not guilt. Now, in their what do they call it? The closing statements, they often use deductive reasoning. So look up a closing statement of a trial, and you'll probably see the prosecution use, or I'm sorry, both teams use deductive reasoning to get you to make the final specific conclusion that not guilt or guilt. Syllogism is just a fancy way to say presenting the general idea and then a little bit more specific idea that's related to the general, and then the conclusion. So it's a three-part, I I call it a word equation. I guess it's not really an equation, but sort of like, philosophy or math. Um, I learned it as premise one, premise two, and conclusion. This document I'm going to show you uses those words, but also uses some other terminology. Um, I would stick with the simplest thing that you can, plant in your memory. It really becomes important just to make it kind of second nature. Um, you know, are you a Texan? Yes. Well, I've heard that all Texans have the obligation to get vaccinated. Are you a Texan? Yes. Then you are obligated to get a vaccination. I made that up, by the way. I don't know that to be a law or an ordinance or anything like that. Um, all people who were born in Dallas are Texans. You were born in Dallas. You have to be a Texan, whether you like it or not. I guess you could renounce your citizenship. So here's the document. We're talking about the Declaration of Independence. Now, the Declaration of Independence it's not a very long document, but it's longer than what we're going to deal with. Um, here's the example that the book used. Oh, sorry. All human beings are mortal, and that they call it the rule. So, a categorical rule. Basically, if we go back to Toolman logic, you'll remember that they use the word, and he uses the word assumption. And when we defined assumption, it's sort of like the basic thing that we all accept to be true as far as we know. So that's kind of what the rule is. I mean, pretty close to the same thing. And then you state some element of, right here, but you state some element, number two here, that's a more specific thing that's related to the first thing, and they're calling it a fact here. So you identify a fact. Socrates, it was human. And then we make a conclusion, same language that I use. Socrates is mortal, going back to the first part of the equation. So the Declaration of Independence is a document that the first, the what do you call them? The founding fathers decided was going to be the announcement to the world that we were no longer going to be subject to the rule of Great Britain. We, meaning the Americans back then. Thomas Jefferson and the other crafters of the document used kind of a long syllogism. So they're using the same language that I use here. First premise, second premise, conclusion. So the premise, if you think about, without showing it to you, if you think about why we would think, we meaning those Americans, would think that we had the right to break free from that government's rule. Well, there have been a lot of protests, a lot of challenges, and without getting too political about it, we couldn't get away with that today. We couldn't just say, hey, this neighborhood is no longer part of the United States. We're going to call ourselves the state of, whatever, pencils or something. So in the Declaration, they're basically outlining when and why a group of people can break free from another, sovereign's governmental authority. So what could be that reason? Can't just say, because we want to. So answering the question, well, why and when can you do that? We crafted this syllogism. Um, if you if you mess with us and you don't treat us right, because you're a government, you're supposed to treat us right. And if you don't treat us right, we have the right to tell you to go screw off, and we'll be our own, um, sovereign entity. That's it in a nutshell. And so you have to accept the rule or the premise that a government is supposed to look out for its people, for its benefit and its welfare. If you're being governed by somebody, you are obligated, the government is obligated to protect, watch out for, um, and provide for the benefits of its citizens. That's a premise that we should all, the assumption, right? The first premise is the assumption. If we don't agree with that, then, and a lot of, and my challenge to the Declaration of Independence is King George says, King George being the George III, the king at the time, the sovereign over the United States as a colony, is not over there thinking, yeah, that's right. I'm supposed to be nice to them. So he clearly probably doesn't agree with the first premise. He wasn't a very, what we call romantic thinker. And then you'd have the facts that have to back up the conclusion that you're going to make about being able to, the why and the when of breaking free from a sovereign rule. So here's just telling you in its terms. I used to give a quiz on this, and it was a fill in the blank quiz, and I would tell students just copy and paste this because I think it was Moodle at the time. I'm not sure how Canvas would accept it, but you had to have those exact words and spacing and everything, or you would get it wrong. And it created a whole lot of headache for me because then I'd have to go in and change grades because you got it right. You just didn't have the right spaces or whatever. So I'm not going to give you a quiz now until I figure out a good way to give you a quiz, but you don't really need a quiz. It was just for points. But this is basically saying the same thing I just said. The government, whatever government is, the Declaration begins with the famous lines, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? So that's really not part of the syllogism, but it sort of gives life to the syllogism that a government, as you're ruling us, is responsible to make sure of all those things, the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So that's what the foundation of this premise would be, this rule. When the government does not do those, when it does not secure the unalienable rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, the people have a right to abolish or alter the government. So in the case of the people who were charging the, storming the Capitol back in January, they might have wanted to alter it, not overthrow it because they're proud of patriots or whatever. I don't know why I did that, patriots. And so they don't necessarily want to overthrow the government. They'd rather change it. But then they would have to provide the truth, the evidence, which would be part 2 here, that the government, the United States government at the time, has done something to take away their unalienable rights. And that's the part where it gets sticky for like the charge on the Capitol, because most of us don't see this happening. We don't see the government taking away your guns. And even if we did see the government taking away your guns, that doesn't necessarily infringe upon your life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Now, if you need your guns to secure your life, liberty, and pursue happiness, that's a different discussion. So in this case, though, in the British case, if you read, we're not going to read the whole document, but if you look at, right, so this is the famous beginning, right? And this is what has the major premise. And we hold these truths to be self-evident, all that kind of stuff. And I don't mean to dismiss it as trivial. It's good stuff. I'm just saying that's more for a history class than here, or maybe a government class. But the second part, the part they call the grievances, is the longest part of the document. It's the body of the document. And you can see it goes pretty far to right here, basically. So from here all the way back to the end of the first paragraph are the grievances. This is the evidence. You have done this to us. You have done that to us. You have done this to us. So we'd have to summarize it for our purposes and say, you have committed many offenses that rob us, meaning the colonists, of our unalienable rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. This is just kind of spelling it out. So again, that's more for a history class or a government class. You know, taxation without representation, a quartering of soldiers, the abolishing of, you know, our governments, the stripping, our implanting governors, people from Britain over here to kind of look out for everything like they're a boss. And so then when we get down to the final part, here you are, you've been messing with us, you've been taken away from our rights. Therefore, good word, right? That's the concluding word. We, the people of the United States of America, I don't know why it's not capitalized, but declare that we are absolved from allegiance to the British Crown. We're going back to our premise. We have the right to, and ought to be dissolved because you're bad to us. Somewhere in here is a good part of it. Oh, if you read this part, I always find it's rather humorous because they're stating logic, right? So the King of Great Britain should be going, oh yeah, okay, well, see you later. Have a good life. And all of Parliament should be going, yeah, you made a good point. Yeah, we didn't think about that logic. Go ahead. We don't need all that money and all that. Go ahead with yourselves. But they're not. And there's going to be a lot of resistance. So they end the conclusion with, and that as free and independent states, they, meaning the colonies, have full power to levy war, conclude peace, and all this other stuff, which means we're willing to back this up, you know, put our money, our fist, our guns where our mouths are, which is almost like saying, we know you're not going to go for this, but buckle up because we're going to start shooting soon. So that's the Declaration of Independence as an example of deductive reasoning stretched out over a long document. Now, your main thesis in your paper may offer the same kind of, I mean, you don't have to say it as three parts, but it may offer the same kind of open door to your whole paper being based upon one syllogism. You know, if people don't control their use of technology, then they will find themselves without liberty and without health or whatever it would be. Now, that's not a syllogism, but embedded in it is the notion that you could stretch across your paper that whenever people, you know, involve themselves too much in anything, whether it's food intake, alcohol, drag racing, smoking, you know, promiscuous behavior, whatever it would be. If you're making that general assumption, that general premise that humans who involve themselves too deeply and too persistently in any kind of behavior often wind up with negative results, evidence shows that many people are engaging in obsessive behaviors with whatever technology you want to deal with. And then we have to make the conclusion that this technology or this use of this technology is causing negative effects, whatever they would be. That's your job to point them out. So, or you don't have to base your whole paper on it. It could just be maybe just an idea along the way where you're building a bigger set of ideas. So deductive reasoning doesn't have to encompass the whole thing. It could just encompass parts of it. And you may not even use it as a syllogism in your paper. All I'm asking for this assignment is that you think about your topic and what you're pursuing and just put down a hypothetical syllogism about your topic, the way that I just did with, I probably have to be a little more specific, but because I don't know what I'm writing about. Does everybody follow that? And then after that, you'll provide me with just the names or a list of 2 of your peer-reviewed sources. I don't need anything else but what they are. Not a summary, just the fact that you have them in your possession. So those are the assignments for this week. The deductive reasoning one should be fairly easy. Just sit and ponder it for half an hour or whatever. And the peer-reviewed one is just a matter of gathering together your source items, at least 2 of them. And then on Thursday, I'll talk about, what you should be doing to use them as you're crafting your paper or your ideas or whatever. Questions about any of that? I didn't expect it to go so quickly, sorry. Deductive reasoning. I have been, I tell you, I wasn't really following the George Floyd, well, I don't know his name. I say Chauvin. I've heard people say Chauvin, Chauvin, whatever, but the police officer who's on trial for now I think I know it's 2nd-degree murder or voluntary manslaughter. I think that's what I read. Those things matter. What they decide to charge somebody with, because if you wanted to charge him, you probably couldn't charge him with 1st-degree murder because it wasn't premeditated. He didn't sit around thinking, I hope I'm going to go find George Floyd today and kill him. But the prosecution has to be careful if they want a guilty verdict of what the possible penalty would be, because jurors get a little skittish, a little scary when, I might send this man to jail for the rest of his life. And what if he didn't do it? Or what if they didn't prove their case or whatever? So they have to charge him with something that they feel like they can actually win, even before presenting their case. So anyway, I've been watching the trial, not really actually watching clips on YouTube of the people testifying. And so far, it's been all the prosecution. I don't know if they changed since a couple of days. I didn't watch it recently, but and prosecution has pretty solid case. So it's sort of like, if I had to make a syllogism, if all the evidence pretty much proves that um, I don't know what is it, Officer Chauvin exercise uncalled for and excessive force in restraining um, I don't know, a detainee or whatever you call a person being restrained, such to the point that he endangered a person's life. Um, well, I say I missed my syllogism. If an authority figure imposes too much force upon somebody, et cetera, et cetera, and then I would say the fact, clearly the evidence shows that video evidence, expert evidence, now I'm doing the declaration thing, I'm listing them. Um, uh, um, Video, but also oral, sound. The man is saying, I can't breathe. Other people are saying the man can't breathe. He's unconscious. So all that would be evidence that, hey, you know, therefore, then we make our conclusion. Whatever they've charged him with or whatever they're hoping to penalize um, Chauvin, whatever his name is, uh, he's guilty of that. But, you never know with juries. So far, it's been pretty good. It's been pretty emotional. If you watch the clips, like everybody gets pretty emotional about, you know, recalling the details of the moments. But anyway, I'm not trying to be political about it. I'm just saying, that's what they have. I assume that's what they'll make as their closing arguments. I haven't heard the defense. I've heard experts talk about what the possible defense could be. And so far, they've only suggested that drug use somehow, uh, I don't know what they're going to do with that because, like I said, I don't know if my analogy is any good, but if I said I'm suicidal, I'm really suicidal, and I put a gun right here and it's loaded, and then you pick it up and shoot me, well, you don't get to say, well, you were suicidal anyway, and you had a loaded gun there. So even if all the elements are in place for you're not being responsible unless you pick up that gun. Anyway, I'm just trying to make logic for you. I'm not trying to, don't go out here say Mr. Schmidt's politicizing a public trial. I'm not a legal person. No, I am a legal person. I'm not a person qualified to talk about legal issues. But, and I'm sure there are other things in the news that we could say, well, if you're interested in gun control, whatever, I didn't read the specifics of the gun legislation that Biden has proposed, but there could be a good syllogism there, like whenever citizens of a country start in mass numbers killing other mass people with weaponry, that weaponry needs to be regulated some kind of way. The rise in the incidence of mass shootings displays that to be the case. Therefore, um, probably wouldn't get a full agreement on an assumption like the first premise that I just stated. So you might have to, if you were working on that. I know you're not. I guess actually you could talk about, it's too late now, but guns and technology. Because the more bullets you can shoot in the faster time, the more people you can kill, and the more likely that you're going to achieve your result. That's technology. Anyway, I'm kind of ranting a little bit, just trying to give you different kind of examples of the way that logic works. But be mindful about your logical fallacies too. Um, make sure your components add up to the conclusion that you're drawing. Um, there was another shooting recently. I don't know how recent it was. I was watching the recorded news. Dante, I know what I'm talking about. Dante Mitchell, somebody in, I want to say Virginia, a police woman shot um, a motorist. Uh, I don't know how old he was, a black male who was stopped for a traffic thing. I think I think the go-to bullsh stuff is a license plate issue. That's just their kind of cover for pulling somebody over. But I don't. You can't really tell from the body cam, but a struggle ensued, and she pulled her taser. She meant to pull her taser, and she kept screaming, "I'm going to shoot you with the taser" or something. But it was her weapon, and she shot the guy, and then he ultimately died. I don't know. I don't know what happened in between. But I'm sure there's a logical, we could get angry about it, but when we try to change things, we've got to come up with some kind of logical connection. Um, so if you were going to argue, if you were going to make an argument about police regulation, you'd make a syllogism that says, clearly, I mean, how do you make the mistake? You pull a taser, you pull a gun. Well, there needs to be something done about that. That would be a proposal argument, probably. And then there was another incident, but I don't recall it. Something, an army sergeant got pepper sprayed or something. I don't know.
Yes, sir. That's what happened. He was a lieutenant, and he got pepper sprayed.
And what happened with it? I didn't see the result.
I saw the video, but I only saw 3 minutes of it. I don't know if I know when they got him out the car, they forcefully, um, forced him to the ground, and they sprayed him a couple times with the pepper spray in his face, and he actually maintained composure, but he was just questioning, like, am I being detained? And they said yes, and that was for no reason, uh, simply because he refused to get out the car because he was just wondering what happened, what caused him to get pulled over. And so I guess he was coming back from the right from the base or from service or whatever the case may be, and he was still in uniform. And they sprayed him a couple times in the face.
Yeah. Whatever I saw, the reporters or whatever saying he was really smart because he refused to pull over until he got to like a well lit place, and yeah, he refused to get out of the car. Which, I mean, it was a weird quandary there, like a paradox. Like you refuse to get out of the car, then you're seen as being what's the word I'm searching for, like resistant or something. But then if you get out of the car, you want to on your face on the ground or otherwise brutalized or whatever.
Right, right.
I don't know enough about that to be able to create a syllogism, but obviously it's probably similar, um, to police bad behavior, or I'd have to figure out the syllogism to make that conclusion, but it seems that way. Um, most especially, I mean, I don't know the facts, but most especially against black males in America, being, I don't know, mistreated or maltreated, wrongly treated. I'm sure there are other things in the news that could help you if you just think about it. You tease your brain. Oh, what's a logical equation regarding that? Anyway, I'm I'm babbling a little bit because I'm just trying to give you more to think about. Any questions about um, anything? I also saw some horrible news thing about a woman who stabbed to death her children, who were like toddlers, because her baby daddy person, I don't think they were married, but the father of the children was uh, wanted, what do you call it, custody. Why kill the children? I don't know. I don't know what to do with that one as far as the syllogism goes. Just news I've been hearing. Maybe this is why I don't listen to the news. Very upsetting. Questions about deductive reasoning or what we have left of the next 2 weeks before the group presentations?
Did you assign us to who our group members were already?
No, I didn't. I'll probably do. I was saying earlier that I would probably do that tomorrow, and
Okay.
create the guidelines tomorrow.
Okay. So we'll see everything like as far as what we should do and everything tomorrow.
Right.
Okay. What time should we be looking for that?
I don't know. Sometime in the afternoon.
Okay, yes, sir.
I got to get my second vaccination tomorrow. Wee. I said the second one hurts more. Not the actual stick, but afterwards. Everybody doing okay there?
Yes,
COVID
sir.
Yes, sir.
staying healthy,
Yes,
practicing
sir.
good social behavior. I have to come in. I think I might have to come in, get my new ID. Do you all know about IDs?
No, sir.
No. Well, everybody have a good day, and I'll see you Thursday if you want to hear more about works cited and citation and in-text and formatting and all that fun.
Yes, sir. You do the same.
Yes, sir. You too.
And the papers are due on the 20th is right. The 20th?
The 21st, I think. I pushed it to.
Okay. All right, have a blessed one, sir.
Yeah. Tiana? Caitlin? Ruben? Checking to see if I have emails from anybody that I didn't respond to. We're good? Oop.